I am Supreme. Today's Astro Oracle investigation will be on Rasheem Rael Carter. Rasheem Rael Carter was a 25-year-old black man who died in Taylorsville, Mississippi in late 2022 under circumstances that his family and civil rights attorneys describe as a modern day lynching. Carter was working as a contractor in Taylorsville when he vanished on October 2nd, 2022. Days before he went missing, he contacted his mother and local police, stating he was being followed and targeted by 3 truckloads of white men. His partial remains were first discovered on November 2nd, 2022, in a wooded area south of Taylorsville. Subsequent searches through May 2023 uncovered at least 4 sets of remains belonging to him. An independent autopsy revealed that Carter had been decapitated, with his head and spinal cord found in separate locations. Some reports also indicated his teeth were missing and parts of his body were dismembered. Official stance. The Smith County Sheriff's Office initially stated there was no evidence of foul play, suggesting that animals might have scattered the remains. However, the sheriff later clarified that foul play has not been ruled out as an investigation remains open. The Mississippi State Medical Examiner's Office ruled the cause and manner of death as undetermined due to the advanced decomposition and animal activity on the remains. Represented by attorney Ben Crump, Carter's family disputes the no foul play claim, citing his reports of being chased and the brutal state of his remains. They have called for a federal investigation by the U.S. Department of Justice. Now, Rasheem Rael Carter was born on October 28, 1996, in Fayette, Mississippi. Carter was a skilled welder, millwright, and former star high school athlete. He was the father of a young daughter, Callie, and was working in Taylorsville to save money to reopen his seafood business. As of early 2026, the case remains unsolved with no arrests made, and the family continues to hold protests demanding transparency and justice. Today is February the 25th, 2026. What happened to Rasheem Rael Carter? I'm going to pull 5 cards from my Astro Oracle. This is my OG. This is going to tell it all. What happened to Rasheem Rael Carter? Unfortunately, we do live in a time where racism is still prevalent in all over the world. Why? I don't know. In 2026, you would think humanity has grown up because we're all on this planet learning how to master the human condition. We all got to learn how to be human and live in a body, regardless of its color, religion, walk of life, race. Regardless, we're at the end of the day, we're all human. And we all have to learn how to master this human condition. Because I really believe if you don't, you have to come back here and do it all over again until you move to the next level of consciousness. I believe that. I believe that the human condition is just one level of consciousness. I believe that there are many levels of consciousness. Like when you go to a school and Earth is like the human class, the class that we call life. Because I believe consciousness is called something different at different levels. But on Earth, We call it life. And this is what we are. We're human, but there's life everywhere. You have animal life, human life, aquatic life under the sea, you know, and I believe we're here to learn how to master being human, how to master the universal force as a human being. How does this universal force play out in a human? You know, so I feel like racism is the elementary nursery aspect of development where you and it's an ignorant aspect. Only reason why I know it's ignorant is because it does not come from children. Racism is taught. That's how I know it's not a part of life. You can't tell me that racism is a part of life. That is a recreation. That is not part of creation. That is a recreation. That is a programming. It's not natural. You look at children and you will see what's natural. You know, children love all people, regardless of color, race, religion. You know, somehow we grow up and we learn how to judge. I feel like when you're racist, you're failing. You have fallen from your childhood. That's the best way I can explain it. What happened to Rasheem Carter? I'm not going to say too much on this case. I am pulling from my Astro Oracle. Because y'all know, when I start talking, I lose track of the reading. But what I'm saying has a lot to do with what's coming out in the reading and the energies that I'm just tuned into. 5 cards. What happened to Rasheem Carter? Who did it? Who's responsible? And how can we locate these individuals? Because I do believe it's more than one. Yeah, unfortunately, you know, people, and it be grown people, 50s, 60s, and 70s, that still haven't learned how to transcend color. You know, 5 cards. What happened? Remember, these don't come out in reverse. All right. We have some challenges. We have an enemy. We have a beginning. And we have an end. All right. So this beginning and end came out in the 3rd house. That is the nature of the phone calls that Rasheem was to his mother and the police. Like, he went to the police too. He was asking them and telling them, making them aware of what was happening to him. This is all the 3rd house experience. The chasing of the white guys that was in these vehicles. You know, him just being in that local environment in the wooded area. Interactions, travels, that's all 3rd house activities. Something got started there, and that's where it ended. We're going to find out what this is when the charts come out. Because that's where he also lost his life at, in the 3rd house, that local environment of Taylorsville, Mississippi. Now, you have 2 challenges. One came out in the 11th house and one came out in the 4th house. This 4th house challenge can represent some challenges that was going on where Rasheem was staying at. Because the 4th house is the house of home and family. Now, this could be his family and his home. But this could also be the home where he may have been staying at in Taylorsville. Because I believe he was staying with somebody in Taylorsville. Because he was going through some situations where I think I heard he was staying with some people, but it didn't work out, and he had to hitch a ride to work because something was going on with his vehicle. I'm not sure, but I think I heard that story. So that would make sense with this challenge going on in the fourth house. These are domestic challenges. The fourth house is the house of home and family. That's Cancer's house. Okay, it is the house of domestic challenges. This challenge right here is an 11th house challenge. The 11th house is the house of groups, gangs, organizations, fraternities, sororities, different races, different religions, different walks of life. This is Aquarius's house. Racism is in this house in the negative. But being that this is a challenge in the 11th house, this challenge right here is definitely racism. Racism starts in this house. This is the house of all people, all religions, all walks of life, all races. So any challenges that come out in this house is discrimination, racism, you know. Then you have an enemy in the first house. This was an enemy in the first house. The house is the house of self. That's Aries' house. We're going to look at what came out in the first house. Because this could either be Rasheem being his own enemy, but this is definitely an enemy that Rasheem had. But whatever comes out in the first house will direct us to this enemy. So let's pull some charts. Rasheem Carter was born October 28th, 1996. On that day, the sun was in Scorpio and the moon was in Taurus. And y'all know how I formulate time. Time is the sun divided by moon cycles. When you put a Taurus moon in Scorpio's house, which is the 8th house, Scorpio and Taurus are opposite signs. So it was a full moon that day. And y'all know a full moon baby, person, place, or thing is always Libra rising first. Libra comes first. Libra begins the chart of a full moon because a full moon is when the sun and the moon are directly opposite each other. The sun is directly facing the moon, which is why you can see the whole moon. That means the sun and the moon are in opposite signs. Scorpio and Taurus are opposite signs. That's why when you put Taurus in Scorpio's house, everything in red represents whose house it is, everything in black represents who's there. Libra comes first. Now, there is a first house enemy. This first house enemy will lead us to whoever was in a relationship with Rasheem Carter. Okay? Now, Libra is the significant other. When the significant other comes out in the first house, that means that the enemy was Rasheem Carter's relationship spouse, the person who he was in a relationship with. So let's elaborate on this relationship by following Venus. Venus rules Libra. Venus is the planet that rules Libra and Taurus. Venus rules the relationship aspect of Libra, and it rules the monetary, material, possessive aspect of Taurus, earthy aspect. So, when we follow Venus, Rasheem's Venus is in Virgo, which is right here in the 12th house. And y'all know the 12th house is the beginning of everything that goes hidden. Whenever somebody is missing, we start looking for them in the 12th house. Whenever somebody's dead, we start in the 8th house to see how it started. And then once we pull the disappearance chart, whatever's in the 8th house will let us know how it ended. And whatever's in the 12th house of the disappearance chart will let us know how this disappearance ended and where they're most likely at. So we do know that being that this enemy was a significant other of Rasheem Carter, who started in the 12th house of the hidden, which began his disappearance. So whoever this person is that Rasheem was in a relationship with was the beginning of his disappearance. Something happened between him and this significant other. Most likely, the significant other was somebody that he worked with, because Virgo is the energy of the employee and the worker, the servant. It rules the sixth house. And in the sixth house, I see Pisces. Pisces rules the 12th house. Because remember, this whole entire chart is a full moon chart. So every sign is in its opposite house. This enemy was a co-worker of Rasheem Carter. Now, Rasheem was a Scorpio. Look at Scorpio right here in the second house. That's Taurus's house, where Scorpio Rasheem is at. The second house is the house of money, material resources, which is something that most likely he needed help with. Now, Taurus was where the moon was in Rasheem's energy. So Taurus is right here in Scorpio's house, which is the house of death, which began the path of his death. We know for a fact Rasheem is dead. We just don't know how it happened. But we should start right here at Taurus in the eighth house, because it started with a co-worker and money. Now, Mercury rules Virgo. Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo. It rules the interactive communication travel aspect of Gemini, which is up here in the ninth house of foreigners, which we do know that he stated Rasheem himself made phone calls to his parents and law enforcement that he was being chased by foreigners, white men. Rasheem was not white, so these white men were foreigners to him. That is what this alignment is right here. I see that. They were chasing him. I see this interaction with foreigners. And Mercury also rules the practical application, work-oriented aspect of Virgo. So I believe that not only did this begin with a co-worker, but this co-worker was a part of those group of white men that was chasing him. Everything began in the third house, and that's where it ended. In the third house, we have Sagittarius. Sagittarius is the energy of foreigners. It is the energy of the woods. It is the energy of foreign travels and journeys in the woods, the mountains, which is where Rasheem Carter was last seen, in the woods. Make sure y'all utilize my Astro Oracle tutorial that is linked in every reading in the description below. Sagittarius is the woods. It began there. Now we're going to find out where it ended, because it also ended in the third house. We're going to look at what's in the third house of this chart that I'm about to pull right now of Rasheem Carter's disappearance. And we're also going to look in the actual house of disappearance and death. The day Rasheem Carter was last seen was October the 2nd, 2022. On that day, the sun was in Libra and the moon was in Sagittarius. You can't make that up. The moon was right here, beginning and the end. You can't make this up. So when you put a Sagittarius moon in Libra's house, which is the seventh house, guess what comes first? Gemini. Gemini comes first. Remember, Gemini was the chase of these white men chasing Rasheem. That comes first. Gemini rules the third house. Look, This is a third house chart. Look at these two cards that came out. That's where it began and it ended. Energy does not lie. So Rasheem is telling us his story. The third house. That's where it began and ended. Now look what's in the third house the day it ended. Leo. Leo is drama. There was drama in the local environment, a fight, a confrontation. Why do I know this Leo is drama? Because that's where Mars was. Mars was in Leo in Rasheem Carter's energy. So when you put Mars the assassin in Leo, the energy of drama, you create confrontation and friction. There was a confrontational interaction between Rasheem Carter and these white men that were chasing him. They didn't just come out the blue and start chasing him. Something got started between Rasheem Carter and these white men. And we need to get down to what started this. Now, look at this 11th house challenge. Look what's in the 11th house in Rasheem's chart. Leo, the drama, which ended the day he disappeared in the third house. Look what's in the 11th house the day he disappeared. Aries. Aries rules Mars. So this group, which is where this drama started, the 11th house, the challenge. He was challenged. He got into a confrontation with somebody from that group of white men that day. It began in that local environment, and that's where it ended. Now, the sun rules Leo. Let's follow the sun to elaborate on the nature of this drama and confrontation that ended Rasheem's life. The sun that day was in Libra. And look at Libra right there in Leo's house. You can't make this up. Libra is right here in Leo's house. You see Libra. The relationship partner, the enemy that came first in Rasheem's chart. The 7th house enemy, because Libra is the 7th sign of the zodiac. And look what's in the actual 7th house. Aries. The same challenge that ended in the 11th house from the group. I believe Rasheem Carter was messing around with somebody that was also affiliated with one of these white men that was chasing him. I believe that. Now, let's look in this 4th house of domestic challenges. Now, in Rasheem's 4th house, I see the authority figure, Capricorn. Now, when Capricorn is in the 4th house of authority figures, a 4th house authority figure is a father, somebody's father. Let's see where it ended. The 4th house, the day he disappeared, I see Virgo. Now, that is the nature of the enemy, because remember, we followed Venus to elaborate on this partner that was an enemy. And Venus took us to Virgo, which was hiding in the 12th house, which began his disappearance. Why did Virgo land in the 4th house of challenges? This could have been somebody's father. Rasheem Carter could have gotten into something domestic, messing around with somebody's child. I'm not saying this was rape or pedophilia. This was, I'm quite sure, was a legal woman, man, whoever Rasheem was messing around with, whether it was a woman or man, it doesn't matter. You know, that's not what's important. What's important is this was his significant other. So we're just going to say it's a woman. Now, he had a daughter. He had a daughter. So we do know that there is a woman in his life. So the fact that this Virgo energy, which is the energy of a co-worker, also somebody that was helping, landed in the fourth house of domestic challenges, lets me know that this was also somebody that Rasheem Carter was at their house and something blew up at the house, a confrontation. And that's where Rasheem Carter left. And I believe the father figure of the individuals in that home did not let it go. They began chasing Rasheem Carter. They began chasing him. Who? Who's involved in this domestic challenge and this 11th house challenge? Who's involved, period, in the disappearance and death of Rasheem Carter? Who is involved in the disappearance and death? Being that two challenges came out, I'm going to pull two cards from the Who. In two cards, Rasheem Carter, let me know who. In two cards, let me know who is responsible for your disappearance and your death. Who is responsible for Rasheem Rael Carter's disappearance and death? October 2nd, 2022. In two cards, we have a neighbor. I told you that neighborhood card came out in my dreams. I had a dream of cards. I don't know if I told you, but I had a dream of a reading last night where the neighborhood card came out. Gemini rules the neighborhood. Now, the 8th house is the house of death. Who's this other person? A neighbor. Yes. You can't make this up. You see, I shuffled the hell out this deck. All those cards don't say neighbor. All those cards represent every possible person that can be involved in someone's life in any form or fashion. Two neighbor cards came out. One in the first house, which also matches this enemy. Yeah, because Mercury rules Gemini, which is the neighbor, but it also rules Virgo, which is the co-worker. Okay? Somebody's house that Rasheem Carter was frequenting during his contract work in Taylorsville, Mississippi. The people from that house know they are responsible for the disappearance and death. They know more than what they're saying. The disappearance and the death. And that's exactly what I asked. Two cards. Give me who's responsible for your disappearance and your death. And that's exactly what he gave me. The first house, which represents the enemy, okay? The enemy that was responsible for his disappearance. Because Venus rules Libra and it led us to Virgo, which started the disappearance. And the Virgo landed in the fourth house where this challenge took place. So the first house was the beginning of the disappearance. And the eighth house is death. The death. Rasheem Carter is dead. Now, the neighbor in that community, the person that he was living with, whoever house he left, is the person responsible for the disappearance. And they know about the death. You can't make this up. Look what's in the 8th house. The day he disappeared. Capricorn. That's the father figure right here in the 4th house where this challenge is. You can't make this up. They need to question that household where he was at. They need to question that household where he was at. Saturn rules Capricorn. Saturn is the planet that rules Capricorn. How much you want to bet Saturn is going to elaborate on this neighbor who killed him? Saturn in Rasheem's energy is in Aries, right here. This challenge, that's who challenged him. And Saturn, the day he disappeared, was in Aquarius. Aquarius is right here in the house of foreigners. And in Rasheem's chart, that's where the neighbor is. The neighbor is a foreigner. And Aries is in Aquarius's house. Saturn lines up right here. This is the individual who he got into it with, because this is the enemy in Rasheem's energy, the seventh house. Right there. You can't make this up. Mars rules Aries. And when we elaborated on Mars, Mars took us to Leo in Rasheem Carter's energy, which was the confrontation in the local environment, which also ended his life. And it was dramatic because they found his body parts in different areas. Right there. Mars that day was in Gemini. Gemini was the foreign neighbor. Right here. And Gemini came first, which was also the enemy. You can't make this up. That house that Rasheem Rael Carter was frequenting, the very person who he was getting a ride with, they know law enforcement need to go and question the person who Rasheem Carter was getting a ride with during his travel activities. And it was said, I heard that the guy told him, well, I can give you a ride to work, but I can't bring you home. Yeah, they need to question that guy. And they need to question the household where Rasheem Carter was staying with. Whoever he was staying with in Taylorsville, they need to question the people in that house, because that's where the challenge started. That's where it happened. That's where it happened. This reading solved this whole case. But I believe they know this. But also, I believe law enforcement is hiding something, because somebody has ties to law enforcement as well from that home. Because Capricorn also rules law enforcement. It's just that because it came out in the fourth house, that means that this authority figure is most likely the father, because the fourth house is the house of home and family. Now, if Capricorn would have came out in the sixth house, it would have been the boss or the manager. If it came out in the 10th house, it would have been the actual police officer. But Capricorn represents law enforcement and authority figures, period. And it was an authority figure that's responsible for the death. And it's somebody that lives in that local environment. That's my reading on Rasheem Rael Carter. And I'm sticking to it. Y'all tell me what y'all think in the comments below. Rest in peace to Rasheem Rael Carter, and justice for his family. Please like this reading, share it so it can generate throughout the media. It's going to reach somebody that knows Rasheem Carter and his family. Y'all be blessed.